Hello there, welcome to this small video about Self-Loading Cargo version 1.6. This is to introduce a new functionality to the software to assist you basically in improving your scores and letting you know what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Now, when version 1.6 of Self-Loading Cargo released, there was a significant overhaul of the scoring system, but it had the limitation throughout that some of the items that you got penalized on, they should have been more progressive. For instance, not turning your landing lights on before you descended below 10,000 feet resulted in an immediate failure instead of maybe a progressive one. Say for instance, if you forgot for a few hundred feet, maybe you should have lost a few points as opposed to all of the points for that particular score. So what I've done for the last few weeks is I've actually revamped the whole scoring system again to improve it, so that things that need to be progressive are, rather than being absolute failures. So for instance, taxiing too quickly on the ground will now be a progressive failure. So basically the longer the transgression goes on for, the less points you will get for each particular score item. But one of the pieces of feedback that I got from Self-Loading Cargo, aside from the flushing toilets all the time as you can hear, is it was kind of like feeling that you were doing an exam without knowing what the questions were. There was no sort of simple way of knowing what it is that you were supposed to be doing, apart from sort of the basics of actually flying. And it was kind of a lottery of getting to the end of the flight, despite trying your best, as to whether or not you got a full score or not. So what I've come up with, now bear in mind obviously there's going to be some more development happening as we go on with Self-Loading Cargo. There's going to be more and more score items introduced, and obviously it would be nice if you knew what those items were going to be. So as I add the new items to the scoring system, they will appear in this functionality that I'm about to show you. So if we open up the Self-Loading Cargo extended menu, I've put a new item here called the scoring checklist. So if I open that up, it's going to open a new window. So like with everything with Self-Loading Cargo, you don't have to open this window, but if you want it open, it can act as sort of a companion to help you get the best out of it and basically figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So briefly, I'm just going to go through how it works. I'll see if I can do a quick demo of something that would affect your score. Now, I've turned everything off here, but there are a number of icons at the bottom, 7 icons, all of which I've turned off at the moment. But basically, what this window does is it shows you all the different phases of flight. Now, currently we're in boarding and loading, and if I was to turn on these buttons here, these are before and after phases of the current phase. So if I turn on the after, you'll see that after the boarding and loading, we will go to pushback, then taxi, then take off, after takeoff, etc., all the way through to the end of the flight. If we were in pushback and I press this button, it would show me the boarding and loading phase and all of the items that had been checked off the list historically, so I could see how well I did. This button here basically means that if you have it turned on, it will automatically snap to the current flight phase. So you can always have the current checklist and score items in front of you. This button here shows sort of a global view of the global scores that are expected of you. So if I turn that on, you can see aircraft control ratings. Now that is items such as the pitch rate, the roll rate, the roll angle, roll rate as well, the airspeed, etc. below 10,000 feet. Things that basically are monitored throughout the flight rather than being in a particular flight phase. But you can turn that on or off simply by opening, turning on that icon there. So now that we've got our phases showing up, I'm going to turn that one off for now. I can view a list of items that are expected of me on a per flight phase basis. So now that we're in boarding and loading, if I turn on the checklist items, you can see we've got a list of things that we're expected to do in terms of Self-Loading Cargo. Now this might not be specific to your aircraft, this is specific to Self-Loading Cargo and what it expects you to do in order to kind of keep the program flowing. For the most part, this is this is basically automated, but it helps to let you know what is to be expected as the application goes on. And you can see, not just in the boarding and loading phase, but during pushback, we will communicate to the ground crew our pushback requirements. We'll await the tow connection. We'll release the parking brake. We'll await the aircraft moving. We'll stop it, put the parking brake back on, await the engine startup confirmation, and then await the ground disconnection. So you can see what's going to happen, so you can expect how self-loading cargo is going to react as you're starting your flight. Now, these are pretty vague, so if I want more information, I can turn on verbose mode. And for instance, in pushback, you can see an explanation of what those different checklist items will entail, and they'll just get marked off as the application flows through. I'm going to turn off verbose mode right now, so you can see a list of all of the items. But there is quite a bit in there that basically the application expects to happen in order to proceed nice and smoothly, shall we say. You might be noticing this one here, which is open aircraft doors. Now, the reason that hasn't been checked off is because we never actually opened the aircraft doors. When I started this flight for this demo, I actually used the instant boarding, so that never got checked off. But actually, if I open it now, if I put it into manual mode, you should see that checklist item gets completed. Just wait for the cabin crew to make a way around. There you go. So you can see it's checked that item off. And because it was checked off, if I close the door, it will remain checked off. There we go. So basically, you can see what is expected now. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, what's self-loading cargo waiting for? Well, it's waiting for the beacon light, and if I was to turn on the beacon light, the ground crew would make contact to arrange pushback, and we would start into the pushback phase. If I turn these checklist items off, however, and I turn on this icon here, which is the score system, I can see all of the different things that are being graded on. So for instance, if I had done some refueling, there's an item here which is worth 20 points, where self-loading cargo checks the status of the seatbelt sign during the refueling, because if I click on verbose mode, if you refuel the aircraft, ensure the seatbelt signs are off if passengers are on board while it is in progress. So basically, if I turn the seatbelt on, I would get failed, because it's a requirement of the score system that the seatbelt sign be off if self-loading cargo detects that the aircraft has been refueled for safety purposes. I get 5 points if I communicate the APU startup. So if I was to talk to ground now,
cockpit to ground,
and tell them that I'm going to start the APU.
Go ahead. We're starting the APU. Please stand by as we'll be disconnecting from ground power shortly.
Roger. We'll monitor the startup from down here and let you know if we see anything untoward.
Roger.
So you can see that the APU startup, I got 5 points towards my score. If I didn't do it, then I didn't get the 5 points. If I started the APU first, without doing the startup announcement to ground, I would get minus 5 points, because that would be classed as a failure. And if I want to demonstrate a failure, there's one here. Seatbelt check for PA. Ensure aircraft seatbelt sign is turned on before making the welcome announcement to the passengers. So that basically makes it's telling you to make sure that they're in the seats before you make a welcome announcement. So I've got my seatbelt sign off. If I start making the PA, it's gonna give me 20 points for actually making the PA, but it's gonna fail this one, so I'm gonna lose 10 points.
Good evening from the cockpit. This is your captain speaking.
So I've started making the PA, and obviously self-loading cargo has detected that it was a failure. Even if I turn that on now, it's still going to know that I actually failed during the course of the PA. You get the idea. So basically it allows me to see every score that I can possibly have throughout the course of the flight. And again, we're 50 points because we're actually on time. We are losing points here because we're 10 minutes, and you basically get a window of 10 minutes to make a departure, as we were expected 9 minutes ago. So we've lost. I think there's a rounding error there. I'll correct that before I release it. But basically we've lost 10 points here because we're 10 minutes delayed. There we go, 10 minutes. So this is an example. This one here, the seatbelt sign, was an instant failure. We lost the 10 points, whereas this is a more progressive one. And this one doesn't actually have a lower bound. So if we were 30 minutes late, it would actually be minus 20 because we would be losing 30 points off the available score for that particular item. Now, once we actually enter the pushback phase, that will continue going until we move, because we haven't actually departed. So now you can see it's gone to -1. It's classed as a failure because we're 11 minutes late from departure. And if you want to, actually, if I go up here, we can view the aircraft controls. You can see all these different scores for all the different areas that are monitored. And if you want some serious sort of overload, you can turn everything on. So we've got the scores and the checklist items. So you've got a whole overview of the entire scoring system available to you, so you can see exactly what needs to be done. Or you can simply turn it off and try your best to get the best possible score without the helper window. But I hope that allows you to see basically how it's going to sort of improve your experience with self-loading cargo by letting you know exactly what needs to be done, so that you can get the best possible scores. And don't forget as well that this is completely dynamic. So for instance, you won't lose any score if you don't perform any actions that weren't required to be performed. So for instance, if you did a taxi hold and it was an extended delay, you would start to lose points if you didn't make an announcement to the passengers, letting them know what was going on. But if you never actually encountered that scenario, you wouldn't lose any points. However, if you did perform well, you would get more pilot points because you would get a good grade for that score as it was injected into the scoring system. So it allows for completely dynamic scenarios to be added to the scoring system depending on whether new things happen. Depending on whether things happen throughout the course of the flight. As time goes on, that will be extended into how well you reacted to an emergency, how well you reacted to a difficult passenger, how well you reacted to technical issues. And obviously they're not going to happen every time, but if they do, you should be entitled to, say, for instance, an extra 200 points on your pilot score over someone who had the exact same flight but didn't encounter those particular issues. So, and again, as they happen, they will be added to this list, so you can see exactly what is expected of you if you're unsure as to what to do. So it's kind of it's a checklist. It's a list of your current scores, your pending scores, and the user manual, which is dynamically generated throughout the course of your flight. So I hope you find it useful when it does release, which will hopefully be in the first week of October, and I look forward to giving it to you. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.